In this video, we have the one and only, and now one of my good friends, Steve Penny on, Silver Chartis from Twitter. And we're going to be discussing the headwinds in precious metals, what Steve expects here in 2021 with his price predictions with gold and silver, how to make the most money in this bull market, and we're going to be discussing his inspiration behind his investments. So just want to say a couple things. First, I want to say a special thanks to our channel sponsor, Vizsla Resources, one of my personal favorite silver and gold stocks. So thank you, Vizsla Resources. And also just want to say, hey, if you haven't yet, be sure to check out Steve's free newsletter right there down below in the description and in the comments right there down below. It's what I think the best free newsletter on the entire internet, and basically designed to be an over-the-shoulder process to help you make sure that you win in this precious metals and commodities bull market that's coming up. So the link is right there down below to sign up for free. Make sure you hit the like button on this side right over there, this side right over there. Give us a comment down below, and thanks Vizsla Resources as our silver stock sponsor.
Thanks for having me on again.
Okay, so what's going on right now, Steve? I sometimes I make questions and I just ask people, on Twitter, and I was reading through the questions I said, what's it going to take to make the price of gold and silver go up? Oh my goodness, those are not good comments to read. So what's going on? It makes people scream, of course, manipulation, and it begs the question of what's it going to take to move the metals higher?
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer that these markets are manipulated. I mean, it's beyond doubt for anyone who investigates. I mean, the precious metals markets are the most investigated or manipulated markets on the planet. And I'm sure that's at play right now. And the fly in the ointment for the last couple weeks and few months actually has been a fairly bearish commitment of traders report that shows how the banks are positioned. And that's been one thing that's been on my radar, is that, they have not been positioned for a big rally as far as positioning in the futures market. Now, the other side of that is JP Morgan has in their depository, they're just accumulating silver hand over fist, the physical stuff. But as far as where we are right now, I mean, this doesn't bother me at all. I've been through this and I know where this ends, but what breaks my heart, or my concern, is for the average retail investor. I know this is part of the process, is that they get shaken loose too early. They sell their shares or their metal, and the institutions and the smart money ends up with all profiting the most in the end. So this doesn't change where we're going in 2021. It doesn't change where we're going ultimately. So this is just part of riding a precious metals bull market.
Wait a minute. I forgot to tell all the listeners to sign up to Silver Chartis free newsletter in the description, in the comments right there down below. Obviously, Steve knows his stuff. And as he said, kind of one of the heartbreaking things is retail investors getting pulled out too soon. So Steve's got an over-the-shoulder service. He's got an epic free newsletter. I was so impressed with it. I thought it was one of the best ones I've ever seen, literally ever. And I'm not exaggerating. So the link to that in the description and the comments to sign up for free right now for that. So forgot to say that, Steve. Sorry. Next remark is, when you say that you've been through this before and you're comfortable in that. So during the last bull market, I know you had a time where you just, you saw the bottom fall out of the price, and, that was kind of the end of the market there. But did you have times like this where you hadn't reached the peak yet and you were sitting there thinking you had already hit there before a next leg up? So did you have those types of times as well?
I sure did. Yeah. I remember if I remember correctly, the very beginning of 2011, if I remember correctly, we had like a 3 or 4 month consolidation period, just like this now since August. It's been, 5 months? So it's a similar consolidation period where you just drift lower. And I was just confounded. At that time, I wasn't as into technicals and really how markets work. I just knew the fundamentals, and I was just confounded on why isn't this going up? What's happening? And you reach a point where people just start to throw in the towel, and then boom, that's when we went from roughly $16 silver to $48 silver in just a few short months. I really think it's very likely we're setting up for something similar in 2021.
So you were in your positions, and had you made any money really yet when it was at about $16 silver, or had you recently entered and nothing was happening, or did you buy lower and you'd done pretty well, but then all of a sudden you just hit this dead point? What was that?
Yeah, I was sitting on some nice gains, but nothing like life-changing yet.
Right.
But, when it went up to $50, that's when euphoria took over, and that's where I got a nice lesson in, the emotions of investing.
And how long did that take to go from 16 to 48?
Oh, let's see. And it may not be exactly 16, so I'm going from memory here, about 10 years ago. But it was a few months, 3 or 4 months.
That's it. To basically go from somewhere in the teens to $48 was only a few months.
Yes, yeah, and there's and that's how commodities and specifically silver bull markets work.
Wow.
David Morgan coined the phrase, I believe it was him, that 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of the time, and the hardest part is holding on for the 90% of the time to catch that last big move, which occurs in that short period of time. You just got to sit and wait for that to happen and have conviction. I mean, the bull markets are going to test your conviction many, many times, and this applies to any market. I mean, picture the Tesla bull or the Apple bull, 10 years ago, how hard it would have been to even ride that bull market. That's just the way it is. You have to endure gut-wrenching pullbacks if you want the big payoff in the end.
That's amazing, though, that you had all these people wondering, hey, it's stuck at 16, 17, nothing's happening. And then 3 to 4 months, it went to 48. So how long did it stay up there before you had your experience where you were sitting on all these gains, and then you had the freaking rug pulled out from under you, which is all of our obviously biggest concerns because we've heard those stories, the battle stories as a metals investor. So how long did it stay at 48 before that happened?
That's a really good question, and I don't remember exactly, but it was a very short period of time. I suspect silver was above $45 for probably less than a week. I'm going from memory here.
Whoa.
But, probably even shorter than that, probably a few days. And the same thing back in 1980 when silver went up to 50, gold went up to 850. I think for the month that it peaked, at those levels, the average price for the month was somewhere in the 20s for silver. So, these spikes happen very short. People like to quote the peak, but it's very few people can nail that peak. I mean, hardly anyone can. That's why it's so important to have a long-term exit strategy to sell into strength along the way, which, back in 2011, honestly, I did not have.
So what makes you think that same thing won't happen again? Where it's just like one day where it's up and then all of a sudden it's back at 18 again in the same, and that was the next bull market. I mean, what makes you think that won't happen this time? Well,
I kind of do in a way, and I don't want to be misleading with that answer. Silver and gold are going to be in bubbles. They're going to be overvalued at some point. That's coming. And I look forward to the day where I can swap my metals for undervalued assets, hopefully more traditional assets that are easier and less emotionally gut-wrenching, more set it and forget it type things. But this is the world we live in, and this is the deck we've been dealt. So silver is going to go into a bubble at some point, and part of my personal exit strategy is to cycle profits as the bull market matures into the more stable gold and senior gold miners, because gold will still go into a bubble, but silver, it's probably when it reaches its peak, which I think is many, many multiples higher than where we are now. It's going to come down pretty fast too.
So what needs to happen for gold and silver to move, right? Like everyone talks about these really big numbers, but it's just like, it won't move. It's nice to hear what you said about how quickly it did move when it moved. But what's it going to take this time for that to occur? And is it possible that there's such greater sophistication in the price manipulation that we don't get that type of break that we think?
Yeah, well, there's so many things that are potential catalysts just looming in 2021. I mean, you can't even list them all. So to predict which catalyst is going to be the one that sends it really skyrocketing, I don't know. But I think the most important input that many precious metals investors steer away from is because it is a manipulated market, is the technicals. And what drives the prices of these metals, sadly, is the institutions and the big banks. and they trade mostly off of algorithms that rely on technical signals. And we talked about this last time I was on. That 200-day moving average is the largest input into most institutional trading algorithms. And right now, gold is just like a few bucks. I mean, I don't know, $3 or $4 above the 200-day moving average, and silver is just a little bit above it. And prices tend to respond to these technical levels, these big technical indicators. And I think right now, I'm not saying we're going to bounce right from here, but I think we're very close to a bottom here. And there's some signals that we're starting to turn around right now.
What would occur if we fall below the 200-day moving average? Does that trigger a huge sell-off in these algorithms then? Because is that a signal of the support line being broke or no?
Yes, that can happen. Absolutely. So what happens often, sometimes you get, they call it a false breakout or breakdown. So you might get a false signal to incite retail selling, and then the institutions come in and scoop up bargains right below the 200-day. So if we do lose the 200-day moving average, you don't want to close the week below there. You don't want to stay below there very long. Now, if we stay below there for like a week, then a lot of these trading algorithms, they go from buy the dip mode to sell the rally mode. I don't think that's going to happen, but when price is above a rising 200-day moving average like now, these algorithms tend to be in buy the dip mode. So that's kind of the mindset, if you will, of these algorithms and institutional traders.
So personally, how I view it is we've been in this really weird air pocket, like we've been in this little air pocket where many of the catalysts and much of everything is pretty much on hold. I mean, these idiots are still in Congress yelling at each other instead of doing anything, while freaking food banks are 8 hours long all over every city. And so then the question begs the catalysts that will come that have not come, because we've been in this weird little air pocket where, we have some idea now that the Democrats won the House and Senate, but there's still just so much political warfare and just really just distracting drama. But when this clears, which it should be, you would think, in the next few days, the catalysts, what do you foresee being potential catalyst in 2021, really beginning here in January, as we have a Democratic House and Senate? Do you foresee an immediate large stimulus bill? How do you see metals responding to something like that? What is the effect if there's more lockdowns? What do you kind of foresee unfolding here in 2021 once we get out of this air pocket?
Sure. So a couple of potential catalysts would be one, stimulus checks. I mean, massive stimulus checks, like you just mentioned. Another one is actions by the Fed. I think it's very possible and very likely the next step would be yield curve control. They prevent interest rates from rising on the long end. And by the way, that's been a headwind to metals in the last few weeks, is slightly rising interest rates. Now you might say, hey, the 10-year note is still below 1%, and that's historically ridiculously low. But when it rises from, say, 0.5% to 1%, that interest rate is doubled, and that's a headwind for gold. Now, what really matters when it comes to interest rates is real interest rates. But the algorithms and most traders, their instinct is to just look at the headline interest rate, the nominal interest rate. But if inflation is going at, say, 4 or 5%, but the 10 years at 1%, we've got 4% inflation. So gold still makes sense. So I think that reality is going to begin to set in. And, I would look for yield curve control to be a potential catalyst.
So explain to me why this control over the yield curve and why they need to do it. Many people say that that's coming soon and it will very positively affect gold. But why do they need to do it, and why does it seem like almost a certainty? So
there's two opposing forces right now: deflationary, recessionary forces, and the Fed is trying to oppose that with inflationary forces. They want to get the velocity of money increasing. They want to get people spending and going out and living, spending and investing. So when interest rates rise, that incentivizes people to, when they're afraid, hey, I'm just going to park my money in these treasuries or in this interest-bearing account. And when interest rates rise, that incentivizes them to do that. They don't want that incentive. They want people to go out and spend because it kicks the can down the road further. So if they put a cap on interest rates, and they have to do that, they have to print money. They have to monetize debt. That's highly inflationary, and that incentivizes people to hold gold and tangible assets.
So I was listening to an interview yesterday with somebody, and I forget what their name was, but they were talking about how they believe there's going to be $200 silver, and that's just an absurd thing to say. But he also said he thinks it's going to happen like within 2 years. And or 2 or 3 or 4. It was like a very short time frame that he expected. He's got this research group, and he was very articulate in his arguments and the things that he presented. And so I thought that was wild. And one of the things that he was saying was that the previous silver bull markets had averaged about an 8x return, I think is what he had said. And so I was doing that math, from present levels at $25 times 8 is 200, actually, exactly. And I was like, man, I'm not sure if I believe it can happen, because this is just like such a ridiculously rigged market. What are your thoughts about something like that? And would you be able to get a catalyst from, for instance, industrial use and industrial demand? The Biden administration says they want to move us from 10% solar to 50% solar. It's about 300 million additional ounces of silver. There's only 760 million mined in the year. Can that do that? And what do you think about a statement like $200 silver in a short period of time, something less than 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not predicting $200 silver in the next 24 months, but it's to me, it's well within reason. I mean, it's very possible. Last time I was on, we talked about $300 silver by 2026. And again, that wasn't like a prediction, but that was just based on previous bull markets. That was the average of the 70s bull run, and the bull run from 2000 to 2011 gives you over $300 silver. And I expect to put it this way, for silver to be less than $300 by 2026, that would be a muted replay of the previous bull runs. It would be an amped down version. I expect an amped up version. It sounds funny to say that, but it's totally possible. And as far as the manipulation you mentioned, like we said, it's manipulated, but I think it's also going to be equally manipulated to the upside.
Can you explain that?
Sure. And we already see that right now with JP Morgan accumulating all this physical silver, and they can accumulate, or they can rig it to the upside in the futures market the same way they can rig it to the downside. So I think these bankers, they're not stupid. They might be evil, but they're not stupid, and they're going to make a ton of money on this precious metals bull market. Go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think I mentioned last time when I spoke with Jim Sinclair years ago, one thing I remember is he said the bankers are going to be on the right side of this when it goes. They always are. And he's the guy who called the top to the day in 1980.
Yeah, super interesting. You want to know what my theory is right now? I think that the present price of precious metals is the greatest psyop in the history of psyops ever. And just when you go online, there's a lot of places with shortages right now, and they're selling so high above what the alleged COMEX price is. I was just looking before. I mean, pretty regularly at $2,000 for an ounce of gold. And yes, a lot of American Eagles are selling over $30. And there's becoming a fairly significant distortion. A market shouldn't work like that. It should not be that different. That's very different for $24, $25 silver selling for that. And, the U.S. Mint said that they basically already sold out. I think they had by over any possible estimates, sold out all of their Silver Eagles for 2021 already. And I'm like, the price should be so high right now if that's happening. And I wonder if the market is just being absolutely cornered right now, because I don't think out of all the people I've interviewed, and some very, very, very wealthy, rich people, it seems like the richest people are like begging for the price to go down,
Yes.
And they're always the ones that are like, oh my God, it's so lucky. But the average, that's why I call it a psyop, because the average population looks at it and they're like, oh my God, this is over. And it's like, you see a pretty obvious transference of hands taking place that is aided by this type of price manipulation.
Absolutely. And that's like, I would say the primary mission at Silver Chartis is to educate everyday people so that they have the conviction to hold on and not let these bankers be the only ones to benefit from this bull market. Yeah, I agree 100%. The smart money accumulates these dips. And unfortunately, it's the retail investors who get scared and shaken loose too early. And another thought I had is, with $200 or $300 silver sounding ridiculous, and I admit that it does sound ridiculous, but I study closely the Bitcoin markets, especially going back to 2017. Not because I'm not for or against Bitcoin. I mean, I love seeing my crypto friends making a ton of money and they're independent thinkers. I love seeing that. But I like to study it from the aspect of how am I going to handle the silver bull market? Because I think there's so many similarities. Bitcoin was there only ever going to be 21 million mined, I believe. So there's a finite supply and there's not enough for everyone to get it. So that same logic applies to silver. There's not enough silver in the world for everyone to even have like a half an ounce. And as this really begins to accelerate, I think people are going to want to store their money, store their purchasing power in a hard asset. They have for 6,000 years. And silver and gold have always been the primary beneficiaries of this kind of environment for all of human history. So to say that it's not going to happen this time, I mean, anything is possible, but we've got a 6,000-year track record of silver and gold benefit in this exact environment that we're in right now. And there's just not enough for everyone to get their hands on even a little bit. So the smart money is gathering it now.
Yeah, that's what I think. So for everyone listening, if you want assistance in that and help in that and navigating this journey, then make sure you go to the link in the description right there. Sign up for free to the Silver Chartis newsletter in the description or in the comments right there down below. Steve, have you ever done any looking into for how much gold China owns? Have you ever?
Yeah, I have. It's been a while since I've done a deep dive on it, but one thing we know for sure is that they have a lot more gold than they claim. And one way they do that is it's called the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. That's their sovereign wealth fund. And they hold a lot of gold there that they take off the Shanghai Gold Exchange that is not on their official books. So one thing we know for sure is that they have a lot more gold than they claim they do.
Yeah, and it's never in the interest of a communist to tell you the truth. I'm sure it's so much higher. Right. Because one thing I wonder about that, like I think about what's the end game for gold, right? And you talked about Jim Sinclair earlier, and he thinks that China and Russia are actually going to basically control the entire gold market in the world. Where do you think the end game of it goes for gold personally?
Let's see. Well, I can go a lot of different directions with that answer, but I think it's been said that all fiat currencies return to their intrinsic value, which is zero. And that is true, that unless that process is interrupted with a new system beforehand. So if you just let this system run its course, yeah, fiat currency, the US dollar is going to go to zero. But I think they're going to introduce a new system before that.
When do you think they would do that?
at a time when we least expect it. Probably on a Sunday evening will be the announcement, and banks will probably be closed for a week or two.
I mean, this year, in 50 years?
I would not be surprised at all if it happened this year. I also wouldn't be surprised if it happened the year after. I'm prepared for that to happen at any moment, but and I think we're certainly close to an event like that. Put it this way: the rules of the game, the world monetary system, and the rules of the game change every 30 to 50 years or so. 1933, 1944, we went the Bretton Woods Agreement that took us to 1971. So from 1971 to present, we're about 50 years. So we're due for a reset of the global monetary system, the rules of the game.
What do you think? What do you think it looks like? What's a currency reset look like?
I don't know the specifics, but I think it's going to be highly inflationary. It's going to have to, otherwise, that's probably the least painful avenue, at least from the authorities' perspective, the central planner's perspective, is for an inflationary environment where debts are forgiven. They're already talking about this, the Klaus Schwab character, these Davos crowd. Debt forgiveness, that's debt monetization. That's highly inflationary. So regardless of the details of how this looks, I think we're looking at massive inflation going forward.
Massive inflation going forward. Do you believe? Okay, so then, are you of the? Jim Rickards says he believes we are in deflation, and we're going to stay in deflation. And he came on my show last week and said that again. And there's a video of him and Peter Schiff arguing with Kitco. Or on Kitco, arguing with one another.
I saw that.
Oh, okay, you've seen that. So, what do you think about that argument that both sides make? Which is Peter's basically saying inflation's coming. He made a good tweet the other day. He tweeted about soybeans and various other commodities that we're seeing big jumps. Versus Jim Rickards saying that there's no money velocity, therefore there won't be price inflation.
Yeah, so I try and follow both of those guys really closely. Those are both really great thinkers, and they both are pretty influential on my own thought processes. And I like that diversity of opinion because it challenges me to think independently and keeps me sharp. I tend to agree with Peter on it. I think we're going to see inflation, and there's obviously two opposing forces here: deflation and inflation. The natural forces are deflationary. If the Fed did nothing, there would be massive deflation. So to say we're not going to have inflation is to say the Fed has limits, like they're going to have self-imposed limits. There's theoretically no limit to the amount of debt they can monetize or currency they can lend into existence. So I think we're going to see inflation because I don't think the Fed has any restraint. Nor any other central bank for that matter.
I just thought of this right now. I wish I would have thought of it when I was talking to Jim Rickards about that specific subject. But could money velocity have different pressures on it than previous times in history, in that so much of our world is digital? So money velocity can change hands without you needing to leave your house as much with everything that's bought online today and the majority of people's purchases. What do you think about that? Because there's the argument that people are making that they expect deflation because of the lockdowns, right? People aren't going out and doing as much. What do you think about money velocity, and what do you think about the idea that we won't get it until life is back to normal?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't have a specific answer, but it's interesting you bring that because the purely Austrian economists, who I'm highly sympathetic to that school of thought, measure inflation as a rise in the money supply, increase in the money supply, which it is. But to see the price inflation, which is the result of money creation, you need money to start changing hands and that velocity, and that's a psychological factor, and psychological factors are difficult to measure. So what is it going to take for people to change their behavior and for that velocity of money to pick up? I don't know. I don't know specifically, but we do know if they keep monetizing enough debt and creating enough currency, that's going to happen.
So, Steve, what is your vision for your life?
Wow. I love that question, but that's really broad. So I'll start big to small.
Okay.
For me, and I love these questions. I love talking about my faith, and I'm not ashamed of that at all. I'm a believer. I'm Christian, so I view things as like I'm here for a purpose. We all are, and it's greater than anything to do with me or serving myself. So what is my purpose here? And it's to know God, to make Him known, to serve Him, and to serve other people, to love people. I guess that's the really big answer. And then as a short, zooming in a little bit for my family, I want to take care of my family. I want to put them in a position to prosper in the midst of this chaotic world we live in and that we're heading into. And to me, that looks like, relocating, getting a little bit more rural, teaching my kids that food doesn't come from the grocery store, it comes from the ground or animals. So I want my kids to learn those kind of skills. And also on an even more zoomed in scale, to serve others with the talents and abilities I have. There's a lot of things I'm not good at, but I happen to be good at, financial markets and analyzing the precious metals. And I want to use that talent and ability to serve other people, to help other people navigate these markets. So hopefully that was an okay answer.
And so you have been a pilot in the Navy, but you're about to quit, actually. And your kids are, I met one of your boys, or he was a little too shy to come on, but I saw him, you don't have babies, they're definitely starting to grow up a little. How do you explain what dad does to them? This whole silver Chartis and this whole way you think at the world. First of all, how old are your kids?
My boys are 6 and 8. My daughter is going to be 2 next month.
So how do you talk to the 8-year-old, about what you think and do, and now basically what your full-time occupation is as a business owner and as an investor?
It's so fun. I think what he sees for me, rather than, the specifics, is he sees that, his dad's not afraid to go against the grain, to think independently, to do things differently. There's nothing wrong with going to have a 9-to-5 job and working at it till you're 65 and then maybe retiring someday. That, honestly, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the only path. And my kids are starting to see that. And they've seen me on this journey for a few years. I've been working my butt off for 5-6 years to transition out of the standard 9-to-5 job, if you will. And then I told my boy the other day, a week or so ago, hey, if you see me in here working, doing charts, and you want to learn about it, you can interrupt me anytime. So on Sunday night, the other night, I'm working on our silver Chartis report. It's go time. I'm trying to get that thing out. And he comes in, sits on my lap. Hey, I want to learn about this. So I push pause on getting the work done and just got to show him about price and volume and how the markets work for about 10 minutes. And then he wanted to go off and run and play with his toys. But just little moments like that are really cool. And I hope they resonate with him as he gets older and remembers those kind of things.
Does he understand why you're interested in gold and silver?
A little bit, but not really. I've put a silver coin in his hand and told him this is real money. It can't be debased. I'm not sure if I use that word debased, but it's a real tangible store of value. So we talk about those things. But he knows the why of all this. My why for working so hard and being in the office all the time is so that I can have more time with my family to pursue life's higher callings, the things I've been put on this earth for.
And do you talk to him like that? Do you say, hey, look, I don't want to work a 9-to-5 and I have this, I have a higher calling from God and I want to pursue it. Yeah. And does he grasp that?
They do. Yeah.
Or does he think you're crazy?
No, they get it. I can tell it resonates with them. They don't articulate it the same way you or I would, but yeah, they get it.
Okay. That's cool. I asked that because I've been thinking about that, with my daughter. She's 5, and I find myself thinking about what it's going to be like when she can hear me and understand me, and I think about my future conversations with her, basically. Also the reality is just kids are the future, and it's important for, one of the problems is as a society, we've been totally brainwashed by a mainstream education system. So I was just curious how somebody that, has a very, different drum that they beat to, like yourself, how you communicate with your kids about it.
Sure. Someone told me a long time ago, I can't remember who said it, but with kids, more is caught than taught. So that like they watch what you do, not so much what you say. And, my kids, I'm sure your daughter, she's going to see my dad does things differently. He thinks for himself and he goes out and works hard, makes things happen, and more is caught than taught. And just trying to set a good example for them.
So do you think that your 8-year-old, I use him because he's the older one. So do you think that he understands what's happening more because he's watched you just basically working really hard at the computer and working your way to get out of this to job, to be home and stuff? It's him seeing that all the time and that type of subconscious impression?
Yeah, I think that's more important, him observing me, than the actual conversations.
Interesting. All right, Steve, give me your gold and silver price prediction
all right,
for 2021.
All right, we'll have some fun. This is subjective, and I reserve the right to be wrong, but I'm going to say on December 2021, sometime in there, or by December 2021, we'll see $45 silver and $2,500 gold.
That better happen, or I'm going to throw my computer.
It seems like we're odd for that to happen now. That seems sensational, but I mean, this is, if there was ever an environment for silver and gold to run, this is it right here. I mean, this has all the ingredients. This is the stew right here for precious metals, for a precious metals bull market to really take off. I mean, they're talking about universal basic income. They're sending people checks. I mean, there's no limit on the amount of currency creation to what can happen here in 2021. So this is the environment for silver and gold. And I think 2021 is where we see things start to accelerate.
Okay, give me your 3 craziest predictions of what's going to happen in 2021, whether it be monetary policy, fiscal policy, things outside of that. What's your 3 predictions for what we'll be seeing by the end of 2021 in our world?
Okay, so my mind is racing. Do I want to stick with the financial markets, or do I want to go with...
Steve, spit it out.
Okay, all right. So big to small, one is going to be, unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot of loss of our freedoms, our individual liberties, and our rights to, live life how we want to, as long as we don't infringe upon the rights of others. I think those days are diminishing, unfortunately. So I think that's going to really accelerate in 2021. So that's a trend, not a specific investment or a specific prediction. Let's see. Another one. I think probably we're going to see more, like for example, I think we'll probably see the government having more direct ownership in publicly traded companies. That sounds crazy, but like for example, Amtrak, the way the railroads are. I think we can see the airline industry going that way. Unfortunately, whether that happens in 2021 or 2022, I think that's something to watch out for. And then a third one, let's see. I think with so much focus right now on all that's going on domestically, I mean, it's a mess, right? There's so much going on behind the scenes on the geopolitical global stage that I feel, I don't want to make a specific prediction, but I feel like, we're not focusing on that. What's going on in the Middle East, geopolitics, the environment is ripe, unfortunately, for military conflict in the Middle East and even beyond there. So that's something else on my radar for 2021.
Does universal basic income exist by the end of 2021, or is that still like 5 years out?
It wouldn't surprise me, but probably more like 2022, 2023, but nothing would surprise me at this point.
Do we begin to open the economy? Or is everybody going to be grounded for a little longer?
I think they'll probably start to open it up as the vaccines get rolled out, and they probably start putting pressure. I don't know if it'll be mandated, but I think there's going to be increased pressure to get that. And, how many people get the vaccine will probably be proportional to how much they allow the economy to open up.
How much money will they stimulate in 2021?
let's see, last year's deficit was around $1 trillion. I wouldn't be surprised to see $2 trillion in 2021.
But what about stimulus specifically? Biden said like that the first thing was just to warm up or something. Yeah. I think he actually said that. Yeah, so
it is crazy. I mean, people don't think like logically, like if this worked, if just sending money to people, why isn't every country doing it? And why haven't we done this before? We should have just been doing this the whole time,
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think there'll be multiple stimulus checks sent to individual families and individuals for sure.
Does the stimulus exceed $10 trillion in 2021? Or does it stick closer to 5?
I'd say closer to 5, but again, nothing would surprise me.
Okay, I think it's going to be 10, but I think we're going to get the 5 super quick. I think if Biden actually is sworn in here, and with the Democrats controlling both these, I think there's like a quick 3 or 4 or 5 that like is rolled off either right away in spring or by summer, and then my craziest prediction is there's a quick flash crash. And then the banks extort everybody for another $5 trillion, and then we're off to the races. That's my craziest prediction. So, last things. What is the number one thing a precious metal investor or a mining stock investor should keep in mind throughout this year?
Number one, there's no substitute for physical metal. I always suggest accumulating physical metal stored outside of the banking system first prior to speculating in mining stocks. That's always been my advice. Even though you can make a ton more money in the mining stocks, you want to build your moat before your castle, your defense before your offense. So don't neglect the physical metal, because there'll come a point where you may not be able to get it, and that'll be the moment you want it most.
Okay, everybody, thanks for listening to this video. I think that's an amazing way to end, and I couldn't agree more with you. So for everyone listening, please be sure to hit the like button on this side right over there, this side right over there. I want to have Steve back on to do an entire subject specifically on the currency reset. How does that sound to you, Steve?
Yeah, that sounds great, Jake. I look forward to doing some of the coming on your channel more often, and I love connecting with your audience. I want to thank you for what you're doing here, by the way. I mean, if you guys aren't subscribed or liking it, he's going out of his way to just provide a tremendous amount of value to our community. So thank you for all that you do.
So for everyone, thanks, Steve. For everyone, make sure you get Steve's free newsletter right there down below, Silver Chartist, in the description in the comments right there down below. And if you want to see Steve back on next week to just talk the currency reset, let's just talk about that. If that sounds good to you, leave a comment down below and let us know any questions you have about that. And thanks for coming on, Steve.
Thank you so much, Jake.